The tiny puppy appeared out of nowhere, its fragile paws trembling against the cold pavement as it followed the Navy SEAL step after step, refusing to turn back. People passed by without noticing, but the men in uniform felt the weight of those small eyes fixed on him, filled with something deeper than hunger or fear. He had walked through war zones without looking back, yet this little creature's silent determination made his chest tighten in a way he didn't understand. The moment he stopped and turned around, the puppy stood upright for a second, as if pleading without words, and something inside him shifted forever. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that even the smallest souls can change a life. The Navy SEAL had returned home only weeks earlier, carrying invisible scars heavier than the gear he once wore overseas. His days felt empty, filled with routine walks meant to quiet the restless storm in his mind. The world around him seemed loud and distant at the same time, and he rarely made eye contact with strangers. That morning, as sunlight filtered through the trees, he noticed the puppy again trailing behind him. It wasn't barking or whining, it simply followed, limping slightly yet refusing to give up. He tried to ignore it at first, convinced that someone else would eventually claim it, but every few steps he felt the faint patter of tiny paws echoing his own rhythm. As the men moved toward a quieter street, memories began to creep back into his thoughts. He remembered long patrols, loyal working dogs that stood beside him during missions, and the unspoken bond between soldier and animal that words could never explain. The puppy's eyes carried that same unbreakable trust, and it unsettled him. He wasn't ready to care for anything, he barely felt capable of caring for himself. Yet when he slowed down, the puppy closed the distance immediately, its small tail wagging despite the visible injury on its leg. Passers-by glanced briefly but continued on, leaving the pair alone in a moment that felt strangely significant. The SEAL eventually knelt, studying the little animal more closely. Its fur was dusty, and one paw looked raw, as though it had walked far beyond its strength. He hesitated, remembering promises he made to himself about staying detached from emotional ties after everything he had lost. But the puppy leaned forward, balancing awkwardly as if gathering courage, and for a brief second the world felt quiet. The men extended a cautious hand, unsure why he felt a sudden rush of warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't just pity, it felt like recognition, as though both of them were survivors searching for direction. He stood again and continued walking, thinking the puppy would eventually turn away. Instead, it followed even more closely, matching his pace despite exhaustion. The path led toward a small park near the water, where he often went to clear his thoughts. The sound of distant laughter and rustling leaves created a peaceful backdrop, but inside him the familiar heaviness remained. He realized that every time he paused, the puppy paused too, waiting patiently for him to lead. That unwavering loyalty stirred memories he had buried deeply, memories of comrades and working dogs who never returned home. As the morning stretched on, the SEAL felt his defenses weakening. He found himself slowing down intentionally, allowing the puppy to catch up. When he finally stopped near a bench, the little animal sat beside him, breathing heavily but looking content just to be near him. He noticed a faded tag tied loosely around the puppy's neck, worn and barely readable. Carefully, he examined it, trying to make out the faint markings. The discovery hit him harder than he expected. The tag belonged to a military dog training facility located miles away. It suggested that this tiny creature might have been born into a world connected to his own past. The realization brought a flood of emotion he had tried to suppress for years. Images of a loyal working dog he once served with resurfaced, a partner who had saved lives but never made it back from a dangerous mission. He had convinced himself that forming another bond would only reopen old wounds. Yet the puppy's presence felt different, it wasn't demanding anything except companionship. Slowly, the SEAL lifted the small animal into his arms, feeling its heartbeat racing against his chest. The simple act felt heavier than any mission he had faced, because it required vulnerability rather than strength. Days passed, and the puppy continued to follow him everywhere. He took it to a veterinarian, learning that the injury on its leg was treatable but needed care and patience. The process of helping the puppy heal began to change something inside him. For the first time since returning home, he woke up with a sense of purpose, knowing that another life depended on his presence. The quiet walks they shared became moments of reflection rather than escape. Neighbors who once saw him as distant began to notice a softer expression on his face whenever the puppy trotted beside him. One afternoon, while organizing old gear in his garage, the SEAL found a faded photo tucked inside a storage box. It showed him years earlier with his former working dog, both standing proudly after completing a mission. The sight made his hands tremble, and he realized how much grief he had been carrying alone. The puppy wandered into the room, limping less now, and gently rested its head against his boot. That simple gesture broke through the emotional walls he had built. Tears filled his eyes, not from sadness alone but from a sudden understanding that healing often arrives in unexpected forms. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing week. The puppy learned to trust fully, and the SEAL found himself laughing quietly at its playful energy. People in the neighborhood began to greet him more often, drawn by the warmth the little dog brought into every moment. He started volunteering at a local training center, helping other injured animals regain confidence. Through these small acts, he rediscovered a sense of belonging he thought was lost forever. The puppy, once fragile and alone, became a symbol of resilience, reminding him that strength is not always loud or visible. As the story approaches its most emotional turn, take a moment to share in the comments a word that represents hope to you. Your message could inspire someone else watching this journey. One evening, while walking near the water where their story began, the SEAL paused and watched the puppy run ahead with newfound confidence. The setting sun reflected softly on the surface, creating a peaceful atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the chaos he once knew. In that quiet moment, he understood the real reason the puppy had followed him from the very beginning. It wasn't just seeking safety. It had unknowingly guided him back to life, reminding him that connection and compassion can rebuild even the strongest broken spirit. Tears rolled down his face, not from pain but from gratitude, as he realized that the smallest companion had helped him confront his past and embrace a future filled with purpose. If this story touched your heart, please take a second to like, comment, and share your feelings below, because your support helps keep stories of hope alive. The Navy SEAL walked home that night with the puppy trotting proudly at his side, no longer a lost soul but a partner in healing. Their journey proved that sometimes the ones we think we rescue are actually the ones who rescue us, leaving behind a lesson that lingers long after the path ends.